Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the heavy forwarder. I mean, there have been lot many requests from many of you that uh, uh, I need to upload a video on setting up the heavy forwarder. Like usually we see lot many videos on how to set up the universal forwarder and all, but there are very few who have explained this configuration of heavy forwarder. So I'm going to show you that today. Mm, in order to do that, I have already provisioned three EC2 instances on my AWS account. So as you can see, the one is Splunk Universal Forwarder, the other one Splunk Heavy Forwarder. I've just given the name them, but we still need to configure them as their name suggests. So like to start with, I'm going to log into my Universal Forwarder first. Let's go there. So I'll just SSH to it. Okay. So I picked the IP of my universal forwarder. I'll just log into it. Okay, so these all are Amazon Linux instances. The username is going to be EC2 user, the default username. Let's change to root user. Go to OPT directory. Okay, so we'll install universal forwarder on this machine because we have named it as Splunk universal forwarder. So let's pick the command line to download the universal forwarder. So I'm picking it up from the Splunk's official website. You can just Google it as Splunk Universal Forwarder download, and then the first link you get that will take you to the Splunk's official site. So I'm picking up this command here to download the Universal Forwarder here on this EC2 instance. Okay, so it's been downloaded now. If you list, you can see that it's been downloaded now, correct? So however, to install it, we need to extract it first. So let's do that. Okay, so the extraction is also done. If you see here, the extraction has been completed. Now, if you want, you can delete this tar file. Cool. So this is done. Now quickly, let's start this universal forwarder. So we all know how to start it, and since we are doing it for the first time, so we need to accept the license as well. So let's do that. Perfect. So this installation is done. The universal forwarder installation. If you'll check the status of this, you can see it. Thus, it's running, right? Okay. Now quickly see for the heavy forwarder, there is no separate software what Splunk provides. It's the same Splunk enterprise license that you need to install, and then you need to configure it as a forwarder. So again, I am here on the Splunk's official site, but before that, let me log into our another instance, which we are going to configure as a heavy forwarder. So let's log into it. .87. Okay, I've logged in, changed to root account. Right. So here we will be downloading the Splunk Enterprise. And for that, again, I am picking it up the command line from the Splunk's official site. So take it and then download it on the Splunk's this instance, which we need are going to configure it as a heavy forwarder, right? So just it hasn't copied. 1 second, let me copy it again. Okay, perfect. So now using this link, we are downloading the Splunk Enterprise instance. It's been downloaded now. Again, it's a tar file, so we need to extract it. So once the extraction is done, we will be deleting this tar file because that's not required, right? So we will be using the extracted file from here. Okay, so it's been extracted now. Let's remove this tar file because it's of no use now. So you can just delete it. Fine. So we have this Splunk enterprise instance on this EC2 instance. So let's start this Splunk start, and we are going to skip the license agreement. So just put this string and then provide the username password. Okay, so once the installation will be done, I'll just enable the SSL on this heavy forwarder uh, from the backend. However, I have shown you in my previous videos how to do it from the front end as well, but yeah, I will be doing it from the backend. So the command is very straightforward: Splunk enable web SSL. So once that's done, we will have to restart the Splunk once again. Okay, it's done. So it's fine. You need to restart the Splunk server, right, in order to take effect. So just to restart it. So after this installation, this Splunk instance will be available. We can access it through the web browser, and it's a complete Splunk enterprise package, right? Because we haven't done any configurations yet. So there is no difference. As of now, there is no difference between a Splunk indexer and a Splunk heavy folder on this instance, right? Because it's just a installation of a Splunk enterprise. To act this instance as a heavy forwarder, we will have to configure it. So let's see how to do that. So now this installation is done. Let's log into this Splunk instance, pick this IP, go. We have enabled this HTTPS on this instance. So that's why I'm giving HTTPS, otherwise we won't be able to access it. Okay, so let's log into this instance. Perfect. So this instance we can access now. And this Splunk Enterprise instance, we are going to configure it as a heavy forwarder. So to do that, just click on forwarding and receiving. So how it will work in general, like you will push the data from Splunk Universal Forwarder to Splunk Heavy Forwarder, and then here you might be doing some kind of data parsing, data filtering, and then the filtered data will be forwarding to the indexer. In this video, I'm just going to show how it works without doing any parsing here on the heavy forwarder. In my next video, I'll show you how to do the data parsing or data filtering, data masking on heavy forwarder, and then the filtered data mask data, we will be pushing it to the indexer. So in order to receive the data on this machine, let's set up the port 9997. That's the default port. So once that's done, just restart this Splunk heavy forwarder. Okay, so that's being restarted. Once this restart is done, we will be setting up the data forwarding from our Splunk Universal Forwarder instance, which is this one, right? I got some error there, looks like. Okay, can't access it. One second. Let me relog into Universal Forwarder. Pick universal forwarder IP, go to another putty session. Change to root user and go to OPT directory where we have installed our Splunk forwarder. Okay, perfect. So I think by now this, okay, the restart would have been completed here. Okay, check the status of this. So this is our instance which we need are going to configure it as a heavy forwarder. So Splunk is running here. It should be accessible. What's the IP for this? It's 87.87. So this one. Okay, perfect. So now if you log in here, if you go to search box on this instance, okay, so this error usually comes with the free enterprise installation. Let's fix it first and then move forward. So for that, if you go to Splunk's PC system default directory, there is a file called configuration file server.conf. So here we have the settings for that error. So what does that mean? That if the free memory goes below 5000 MB, the searches won't be working. So we'll just reduce that threshold for now. Okay, so just pick these Stanja disk uses. Go to, we are not making any changes on the default directory because that's not recommended. So the changes we will be making in the local directory. Okay, so let's go there, paste that Stanja disk uses and just change the threshold from 5000 to 50. Okay, so this is done. Let's restart. So now once this restart is done, this error will go away, the minimum disk space, right? So let's wait for the restart to complete. Okay, so it's done. Now if we'll run the search query on this instance, it won't throw that error. See, so that error has gone now. Fine, so it's configured. Now let's start pushing the data from universal forwarder to that index, to that instance. So for that, I'm just creating a sample log file here. Three zero four 29. This is the sample log file to push from universal forwarder to the forwarder. Okay, so this sample log file is done. Let's save it. However, we haven't done any configuration, right? We haven't let this instance know that where it has to push the data, right? So before doing the any uh, 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 entries in the inputs.conf, we need to let this instance know where it has to push the data. So for that, we can either make the changes in the outputs.conf file directly. So currently, if you see inside Splunk etc system local, we don't have outputs.conf and inputs.conf, right? So either you can directly create the outputs.conf and you can put the indexer information there, that other instance information there where you want to post the data, or what you can do it through the CLI by one simple command. So that's Splunk add forward server, and we are going to put the IP of our Happy Forwarder instance. So don't get confused. It's still working as a full-time Splunk instance because the configuration still needs to be done to make it heavy forwarder. So for now, just to think of it as a Splunk full instance. Put the IP of that instance, and we have configured the receiving of the data on this instance on port 9997 that you can see inside server.conf. Let's open this server.conf. Sorry, that will be because we made the changes through GUI, right? If you remember, we went to settings and then forwarding and receiving, and then we configured the receiving from here, right? Configure receiving, add new. So this we have done through the search app. So that's why the data will be inside the search app only. opt splunk etc apps search local. So here in inputs.conf, you'll see we have this Splunk TCP 9997, which means this instance is ready to listen the data on this port 9997, correct? So let's run this, put the username password. Okay, so this instance is ready to push the data to this instance on this port 9997. Let's restart, or before restarting, let's configure the inputs.conf as well. So we already created this sample log file here inside the OPD directory sample.log. What's inside this, we can take a look. Just one liner information is there, and we want to ingest this log file to the Splunk Universal Forwarder instance. So in order to do that, we will have to configure the inputs.conf file. So let's create, because currently we do not have this inputs.conf here, right? So let's create one, inputs.conf. And here we need to pass some string. So I'll let you know like how to pick that. You can go to Google, check for inputs.conf Splunk example. It will take you to the Splunk's official site. Just go there. Go at the end, inputs.conf example. You'll see this. Just pick. There are a lot many other things are there, but we are just going to use the basic ones. So just put that here. Our log file is inside OPT directory, and the name is sample.log. Source type, I'm going to make it sample data. Okay. So I haven't created any index here, right, on our Splunk for heavy forwarder, right? So that's why I'm pushing the data to the default index, which is main index. And that's why I'm not giving any explicit index information here. So just save it. So this is done. Now let's restart. So once this restart is done, this universal forwarder will start pushing this data to the Splunk, this instance, which we are going to configure as heavy forwarder. So let's check whether we have started receiving that data. Okay, so the data has started coming here. Uh, this is the sample log file, the same data what we created there on the universal forwarder machine. Now, so this currently, if you see, it's working as a full Splunk instance, right? A complete Splunk indexer. However, we want this instance to act as a heavy forwarder. So for that, you again need to go to forwarding and receiving, and then you need to configure forwarding. So after receiving the data on this instance, it will immediately push that data to the another instance which we are going to configure. But before that, just keep in mind there are few settings. There are default settings. Store a local copy of forwarded events. So the data what we are pushing to this instance, do you want to make a copy of that data here before it pushes that data to the another instance? But we do not want this instance to keep a local copy. We just want it to do the parsing and masking or data filtering and then forward that data to the indexer, right? So I'm just going to leave it default, which is no, it's not going to keep the local copy. Now let's configure our actual Splunk indexer. So let's go to this instance, log into it. Login, change to root user, go to OPT, take the command line from Splunk's official site. So you all know like how to install the Splunk, right? Just take the command line, install it. Okay, so it's being downloaded here. Okay, it's done. Now we have this tar file, so we need to extract it. Let's do that extraction. Once that's done, we'll delete the tar file. Perfect. So this is done. Let's remove this tar file. Okay, sorry. So now let's start the Splunk on this machine. Go to Splunk win and then execute this Splunk start since we are starting for the first time on this machine. So just skip the license. Except, oh, spelling mistake. Username, password. Okay. So once Splunk starts on this machine, we will be able to access it through the web browser. And this instance, we are going to make it a Splunk indexer. We are not going to convert it into the heavy forwarder. So it's done. Just check the status of this Splunk instance. It's again a full Splunk enterprise package installation, right? So it's running. Let's access it through the web browser. Okay, before I start, let me just enable the SSL on this machine as well. Okay, it's done. Let's restart. So now we will be able to access it using HTTPS, not over HTTP, because we have enabled the SSL. And this is a default SSL which we get along with the Splunk Enterprise installation. So we are using the same. Okay, so it's perfect. So the restart is done. Just check the status. Okay, it's running. So now access this indexer. since we have enabled HTTPS, so use that, otherwise it won't be accessible. Web port is 8000, just keep that. Log into this instance. Okay, on this one as well, we won't be able to search the data because we need to change that configuration, right? What we did on heavy forwarder. So let's do that. If you try to search now, it will give that same error. So let's go to this instance. Go to Splunk etc system, default, open server.conf, take that. Disk uses Stenja. So now go to local directory. So here in server.conf, just put that and change the threshold from 5000 to 50. Okay, so it's a configuration change, hence we'll have to restart. So once it's done, we will have to enable the receiving of the uh, data on this Splunk indexer, right? So let's do that. It's been restarted, so we will have to log in again. Okay, so now that error gone, right? That 5000 MB. So now this instance, we are going to make it act as a Splunk indexer. We are not going to convert it into the heavy forwarder. So we're receiving the data on this instance on the default port 9997. And again, it will put the configuration changes on the backend inside inputs.conf inside search app that we saw while we did it on the heavy forwarder. So 9997, we have enabled the data reading on this instance on the default port 9997. Now on this machine, we want it to act as a heavy forwarder, not the indexer, right? So we have already configured the data receiving on this, and we in fact tested, like we were able to receive the data. Let me just show you again. From universal forwarder, we tried to put the data, so we could receive it here. Okay, so let me show you again. This data we posted and we were able to see it. Now we want this instance. Just 1 second, I'm getting a call. Okay, so now we want this instance to act as a heavy forwarder, right? So what we'll do, we will enable the forwarding of the data as well. And we don't want this instance to keep a copy of the data. We just want it to do the parsing and forward it straight away to the indexer machine. So let's configure forwarding. And we want it to forward the data to this indexer machine. So let's take up IP of this indexer machine, put it here, and the receiving we have enabled on this indexer machine on port 9997. So just give it save. Perfect. So now we have enabled receiving as well as forwarding of the data on this machine. So now this machine will act as a heavy forwarder. So let's restart. This is the machine. Yeah, this is the heavy forwarder machine. It's logged off. I'll have to re-log in. Okay, all connections lost. Let me reconnect. Okay, so let's log into Universal Forwarder first. We have logged into the Universal Forwarder. Let's check the status. Whether Splunk daemon service is running on this or not. Forwarder win. Splunk status. Okay, it's running. Log into Splunk heavy forwarder instance. Log into it. Go to root count pt. Okay, so we have the Splunk. Let's check the status of Splunk on this machine as well quickly. Okay, perfect. It's running here as well. Now log into Splunk main indexer machine. Go to root user opt. We have a Splunk. Check the status of Splunk on this machine as well. It's running. So this is our main indexer machine. Perfect. So now we have configured the forwarding of data from this heavy forwarder to this instance. So let's start pushing a new log file from universal forwarder to heavy forwarder, because from this machine, if you see, let me just make it clear so you don't get confused. If you see here in the outputs.conf, right, we have given the IP of 162.87, and that's the IP of our heavy forwarder 162.87. So we are pushing the data just to this heavy forwarder. We are not pushing the data directly to this indexer machine, right? So let's push a new log file to this heavy forwarder and then see if it's able to push that data to this indexer machine without copying the uh, uh, that log file here locally. Okay, so let's go to universal forwarder. We'll modify the existing log file. So I'm giving random time, receiving the data from this universal forwarder. Heavy forwarder will sit to the indexer machine. Okay, so let's save it. And since it's again a configuration change, so we'll have to restart. So restart Splunk daemon on universal forwarder. Okay, so it's done. Now let's go to heavy forwarder first. Check for the data here. So we have just one event here, which we pushed back before converting this instance in a heavy forwarder. Now let's go to our main indexer. And you can see here, right? Though we are pushing the data from this universal forwarder to this instance of Splunk, but now since we have converted this instance into a heavy forwarder, it's able to push the data to this main indexer, right? So that's how heavy forwarder works. In my next video, I'll show you like what all we can do using the heavy forwarder. What's the use of a heavy forwarder? Why we use it in the production environments? Like what all we can do using heavy forwarder. So I'll show you it, that in the next video. I think then that's it for this session. Thanks everyone. I'll see you in the next video.